I would first like to go ahead and start by introducing our host this evening, Mr. Bobby Jones. Bobby is the founder of Premier Spectrum Group and Diversified Financial Strategies. He specializes in diversified investment opportunities for clients that want to diversify and rebalance their portfolios, and he also works with a team of leading experts in the cellular wireless spectrum industry. And I'll turn it over to Bobby. Bobby?
Thank you so very much for being here with us this evening. I'm here to talk to you about an opportunity which now exists in the cellular wireless spectrum industry. Most people know very little about participating in the wireless spectrum industry because up until recently, it existed for the large telecom companies, but it hasn't existed for the private individual since the lotteries back in the 1980s. The returns and events, as you'll discover today in this presentation, the potential return in wireless spectrum is just absolutely staggering compared to the monies that people make in the stock market or the monies that you end up making in a savings account or money market. It's just not there. And in order to create the opportunity we now have in front of us, two major items had to transpire. They were first, the FCC had to move away from granting FCC licenses based on the lottery system and then, of course, the auctions that they've been using for the last number of years and continue to use, and moving to a licensing system based on applications, which happened back in 2004 with the FCC WT Docket 02-55. Secondly, cellular spectrum had to be available in which to apply for, which, thanks to Sprint, it is now. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, Mr. Kent Murkey. Kent is an absolute icon in the wireless spectrum industry, an industry he's been heavily involved with over the last 27 years. I've known Kent for a number of years, and his heart has just always been involved in the spectrum industry. I've known him for 15 years, and this was back before everything else was really going strong with the cell phones as we know them today. The last time an opportunity similar to this was available to us was back in the 80s, and Kent was there for the asking. It was at that time Kent successfully turned $75 million worth of investments into what is now worth in excess of $3.5 billion, or over a 48-time return on investment. Kent will share with you this evening his past and bring you up to speed on the present. And now I'd like to turn it over to Kent. Welcome, Kent, and look forward to your presentation this evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Money from Thin Air presentation by invitation only. What you're looking at here is a gentleman that owns a cell phone, bought it from a major carrier, I'm sure, and he has a monthly plan that he pays. There's a tower that pays monthly rent to a landowner, and there's equipment on the tower that pays rent to the tower owner. So a lot of money is being made here, but the real wealth, the real money, is what you don't see. It's the airwaves. It's a natural resource that doesn't deplete like oil or gas. And more money has been made in the last decade in the information age by the ownership of Spectrum than almost any other resource. Matter of fact, more than any other resource. 22 of the Forbes 400 people, including the wealthiest man in the world, have made significant amounts of money. He, Carlos Slim Halo, has made most of his money as a result of Spectrum. The Citizen's Guide to the Airwaves, which is published by the New America Foundation, very well known in wireless circles, 30-some-odd page report, demonstrates a number of things. A small group of wealthy insiders know that Spectrum has already become worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Since the printing of this report, it's become worth over $1 trillion in the last 3 decades. And these wealthy insiders know that in the near future, it may become worth more than all the gold ever discovered by humankind. Every era of humankind has a resource that drives wealth creation. I don't remember this, but in the agricultural age, it was land. If you had land, you had wealth. In the industrial age, for the last 150 years, we had fossil fuels oil, gas, and coal. And if you had that, you had wealth, the Rockefellers. In the information age, which is now, especially for the last decade, especially for the last 3 to 5 years, it is spectrum, popularly known as airwaves. In recent decades, the value of spectrum has exploded. The demand is very, very high and increasing, and the supply is quite limited. I'm Kent Murky, that's me. I've been in this business over 41 years, the financial services business, trained as an accountant, financial consultant, investment analyst, and investment banker, owned my own brokerage firm. I was a principal of the Cellular Corporation, which was the largest federal communication application services firm in the United States. Historically, it's still the largest, founded in 1983, and supplied applications to individual investors who have done quite well. I'm a founder of the IRA Institute. I mentioned that. It's been around 15 years because a lot of the people who involve themselves in spectrum ownership do it through their IRAs, through self-directed IRAs, 401ks. And I'm a principal of the Infinite Banking Center, which is a financial consulting investment analytical firm. In the beginning, I was in the investment banking business 3 decades ago at a company, interestingly enough, called Spectra Financial Network, before I knew what Spectrum was all about. And I just raised $1 billion with the company. I was about to sign a contract to raise the money for Super Shuttle, which I did. And 3 businessmen whom I knew decided they wanted to meet me. Nicholas Wilson, who married the daughter of National City Bank and chairman of the board. Albert Schneider III, old money from Cleveland, an attorney. And Peter Lewis, a communications engineer. What was that? Well, they said they'd like to meet with me. I knew them, and I said, okay. We met in San Francisco, and their subject was cellular radio telephone technology. What was that? They said it's a new communication revolution. And I said, well, what does that mean? They said, mobile telephone. I said, well, I have a mobile telephone. It doesn't work very well. They said, no. This is different. It works using cells. And they drew out these cells. And in the center of each one of these cells is a tower 30 miles from the other tower, 30 miles, 30 miles. And as you move from one tower to the next through these 15-mile signal radiuses, it gets weaker and hands off to the next tower. It's that simple. So I asked them, where is it? And Peter said, we're about 5 years behind Finland and Malaysia. It's our technology, and our government finally said, we better get on the stick. So Peter built out Washington, D.C. on behalf of the government. So I flew to Washington with him and drove around Washington, D.C. with a cell phone. You can picture this. And I had perfect service calling my mother, my wife, Europe, just like I was talking from my living room. So we flew to Chicago, where he was building out another site, and same situation. So I saw a wonderful opportunity, and I decided I was going to do this. Prior to raising the money for Super Shuttle, I was going to educate America about this. I had 11,000 clients who just invested $1 million. They were happy with me and my almost 1,000 financial planners throughout the country. So I spent the next 9 months doing hundreds of seminars with thousands of attendees, and I'm going to repeat, who liked us, respected us, had done well with us, and the results were 95% did not do business with us or participate. No problem. Percent of my investors invested $75 million. I still did okay, but that's not great. But I was able to go back to them after 18 months and give them 1,000% return, 10 times their money in 18 months. Well, some of them sold out for that because that's a good thing. They were able to do quite well. Double your money in 10 months is really good. And as an investment banker, I was thrilled, but a number of them didn't need the money and decided to stay in because they did see the future. And the value of that spectrum is worth $3.5 billion today. Consider that, 75 million became worth over $3.5 billion. And some of my investors who put in as little as $5,000 are getting annual income of $150,000 to $300,000. Too good to be. Statement naively after 27 years was to give the 95% who didn't invest a second chance. Little did I realize that I was in my 40s when I did this. They were in their 60s, and now many of them are dead or brain dead, so there weren't many of them to talk to. So what we've got here is a cellular tower, and that cellular tower could be anywhere from 5 to 25 years old. They just don't require much, you know, you don't want to touch it because you don't want to break it because there's nothing to do. There's no maintenance. It's working as hard as it's going to work. It's a work-free business. It really is a work-free business. It's ownership of spectrum. It's got very high income historically. It's got very low risk, hardly, if any. Everything has risk, but very little. It's results proven. People that own spectrum make a lot of money and create a lot of wealth. And as I said, of the Forbes 400, the wealthiest man in the world is a big spectrum owner, and that's how he made his money. And it's work-free. There's just nothing to do. You look at your tower and you don't see anything happening and you go home. I'm not trying to make this sound irresponsible, but there are not a lot of responsibilities running a cellular business. Capital investment is small, and listen to this. For 3 decades, this industry has grown by 20% a year. That's not an average. It's grown by 20% or more every single year. So this is what the market looks like. This is where people are used to investing, and I just like to show people this because in the old days, for 20 years, I was in this business and promoting, you know, get into the stock market overall. It increases. But let's take a look at this. Back in the 1800s, the 1830s, that decade went up 2.8%. That isn't bad in those years. In the 1840s, up, 50s down, 60s up, down, down, down. In the 1900s, it went up, pretty nice, down. So you can see this is a pretty rocky ride, but the 1920s, the roaring 20s, it went up more than ever. It was the roaring 20s, and then it crashed more than ever. And it was, according to our current politicians, the biggest crash of all time. Nothing like it. So then our boys came back from the war and pretty much got things going. And we had the 40s and then the 50s. And now look at this thing. But then we had a correction. I've always found it interesting. What are you correcting? If this is good, what are you correcting? Well, you can't have a correction unless something's wrong here. So it corrected, and here we go again, the dot-com bubble, and then the financial bubble, and then again another crash, almost as bad as the one of the decade of the 1900s. The 2000 decade, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, was the worst. But look at this. This is a nosebleed and a stomachache roller coaster ride. Nobody deserves to put their safe money in a place like this. Put it where you can own cash flow instead of speculating in the value of a stock going up or down because somebody hiccups. So why are we here? We're here to look at a very unusual opportunity. It happened to myself and my clients 24 years ago, 27 years ago, and it's happening again. To own cellular spectrum, high demand spectrum that's already in use with current income streams. Why would anybody give it up? I'll tell you about that in a minute. Very high return on investment, relatively low risk. More wealth, this is back to that publication. More wealth will be created from the mobile internet than has ever been created from the fixed internet. The fixed internet is your computer. The mobile internet is your cell phone or your smartphone on your hip. Let's take a look at it. When did PCs start and how many are there? Personal computers were started in the late 70s and early 80s. And there's a lot of them around the world. You think there are more mobile devices? They were created in the late 70s and the early 80s, same time. In 10 years, will there be more personal computers? Of course. Will there be more mobile devices? Of course, maybe a lot more. This guy, Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google, says he knows where they all are. And there's 800 million personal computers out there. That's as of August of last year. How many mobile phones? 3 billion mobile phones. And of those, 600 million are data and internet capable. And more of them every day are becoming smartphones. And he says, and this is what's more important about this article than anything, the networks are not capable. In other words, Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, their 5-year business plans call for them to have a lot more spectrum than they have, a lot more spectrum than they're going to get. So it's going to be, you know, iPhone overload. Wireless industry history. Basically, monthly income approaches total investment, which means you put a couple of $1 million into building out a cellular site, and within 18 months to 2 years, you have a couple of $1 million a month of income. Very wonderful business. Growth, the growth of the business, I said before, 20% per year, every year for the last 3 decades, and we expect it to continue to grow. And the value, from an accounting standpoint, which is my bailiwick, typically exceeds 25% of the investment, 25 times the investment, and that's after it matures for a couple of years. Here's an article called iPhone overload. It should be smartphone overload because BlackBerries have overloaded, iPhones have overloaded, Droids have overloaded the systems. 5 times as much data is being used by smartphones than other systems, and the amount of utilization of spectrum has effectively tripled every single year, and now they expect it to continue to triple. Again, overload on the system. Pretty much shut it down. There's what you probably thought I was driving around Washington, and there's the guy with Motorola who invented it, and he was at the CTI convention this year where we went. That's called the BRIC. That's called the BRIC. It basically was a cellular radio telephone. That's a mouthful. No wonder people didn't invest. It was good for talking only, and it did a good job. The value of it was based upon the number of subscribers. If you owned Spectrum in 1981, didn't know how to value it, but by 1985 it was being sold at $10 to $20 per pop. $10 to $20 per pop. In 1992, it was being sold for $280 per pop. It's all in Wireless Nation. I'm in the book. We're in the book. Our clients are even in the book. It was written about the Wireless Nation and the growth of it. It's out of print. You can get it from Amazon for about $1. They'll charge you $3 or $4 to ship it, though. Money from Thin Air, after which I've named this presentation, is also a book that describes a lot about this business, and this business is just that. There's the first smartphone for sure. But here's what I really was driving around Chicago and Washington, D.C. in, not with the BRIC, with the Princess phone in the back of a car. The BRIC didn't come out till a little later. That was followed by the big, heavy flip phone that was heavier than the BRIC. Nokia started streamlining things, and Motorola had to streamline their flip phone, and then the communicator came out, and then, you know, all these smartphones, the BlackBerry, and then too good to be true, there it is. Everybody said, now the business is going to take off. Come on. We were doing 20% a year when this thing came out, but yeah, that was too good to be true. Then the Droid. In that hand is better than too good to be true, better than Steve Jobs and Apple ever thought it would be, and now there's the iPad, and that sells more than they thought it would be. The utilization today is 92.7%. When we first started, the Wall Street Journal said if it ever got up to 2%, it'd be one of the most lucrative wealth-building businesses in the world. It's 92.7% of us are using these things. Improved versatility, you just don't talk on these things. The iPad, you don't even talk. Mobile voice, text message, and everything your computer can do. And now the new one, the Evo I just got from Sprint, I can even see it. So I can do everything I can do on a computer on my handheld mobile smart device. Thousands of new applications, over 200,000. It's amazing. The Chester Gold in 1946 saw this coming and put a voice-activated video phone on Dick Tracy's wrist. Now we're moving into 4th generation data speed. I have a 4G phone. And the wireless internet is going to be running parallel to the wired internet, and we need spectrum big time. Every major carrier has limited lower frequency bandwidth spectrum with which to make future growth. High demand, low supply is a formula for wealth. The demand for 800 megahertz, the best 6, 7, 800, 900 megahertz is the most efficient out there. That's what we're talking about today. Those are the Rolls-Royce of spectrum. And the value, even with advertising revenues, we're getting more revenues. Google taught us that. And each time we move from 1G, 2G, 3G to 4G, our capacity increases. So what's the opportunity? Where did it come from? It's from Nextel and FCC. They had a strange relationship, but it was very close. And they made an arrangement back in the 2000s, early 2000s, and they had an invention called the vocoder by Motorola that was going to double their capacity. Nextel was purchased by Sprint ultimately. I'm going to review this. But they had spectrum that was not set up for broadband. It was analog to handle the type of phone that they use. So they're going to have to reconfigure that. And they asked the FCC if they could. They said yes. I'm going to give you an explanation. And from this point on, everything I'm going to tell you is validated by Federal Communication reports, orders, memorandums, and public notices. What I'm saying here is the application services provider, or us, did not invent this. This was put together with Nextel and FCC and the Federal Communications Commission, and it's all documented. It's available to you. So Nextel became the fastest, here's the history, you know this, the fastest growing cellular company in history with a unique portable phone. Remember what it did? It was push to talk, it was a walkie-talkie, and it was also a cellular phone. One phone replaced the pager. A pager? What's that? A cell phone and a two-way radio. It was brilliant, and they just grew. It was used by public safety, ambulances, fire departments, police, businesses, individuals. As I said, it became the fastest growing portable phone company in the United States. Nobody has ever grown as fast. It's still historically the best, and they owned that business with the exception of two small competitors that were involved in their spectrum. Southern Link in the South in 2 or 3 states, and a company that we were involved in, Preferred Communication Systems, and still are, in Washington, D.C., San Francisco Bay, and Puerto Rico. So you can see that Nextel not only had the majority of the spectrum, they almost had it all. Just two dinky little competitors. But the future was broadband. Nextel had some valuable 800 megahertz, the Rolls-Royce, but it wasn't configured correctly for broadband. It was analog, not digital, and they could see the future. They had this spectrum that had holes in it. It was Swiss cheese, and they called it that. The industry called it. They had these holes. They had to get those holes out of that to digitize it. They needed clean and contiguous coverage. Clearly, Swiss cheese had to become American cheese. Kind of fun, but it's a good metaphor. The spectrum had to be reconfigured, or Nextel wasn't going to be able to compete in the future with Verizon and AT&T. Verizon and AT&T had about 50% of the marketplace. Nextel had about 7.5%. They weren't big enough to compete at all. They'd be stuck with voice-capable phones while the others would be doing all of this other stuff that we're doing now. So they had to do something. So they asked the Federal Communication Commission for permission to reconfigure their 800 megahertz IDEN spectrum throughout the country, make it digital instead of analog so they could get in the broadband business. It's going to take billions of dollars in 2 or 3 years. The FCC said fine. But they also said we have to compete with Verizon and AT&T in the meantime, and as a result, please give us a block of 1900 megahertz. You have to put up 5 times as many cell towers in the same 30 miles, but it's better than nothing. Bigger is not better in spectrum. The lower spectrum is better. So they gave them some 1900 megahertz, and that was going to put Nextel in the position to say they were in the broadband business, which they did, and FCC gave it to them. Competition, however, said we deserve the same treatment. The FCC and Nextel forgot about Southern Link and Preferred Communications, and as a result, they screamed foul. They said, we want some too, some of that free stuff. So Verizon, interestingly enough, was not in the push-to-talk business, and they stepped up and sued the FCC, saying that, in fact, they had to pay for theirs, and it was unconstitutional for the SEC to give Sprint or Nextel that spectrum. So they had to take it back. Nextel wasn't going to, they were going to have to pay for it. But since they were buddies with the Federal Communication Commission, they decided they would let them pay for it after the fact. So they made a trade. They said, we'll give you the 1900 megahertz block, but when you get your 800 megahertz rebanded, you have to give up 40% of that, and you can keep the 1900 block. So they had no money out of pocket. So a sensational deal just became a great deal. The deal was completed in 2004. They were going to do the rebanding and clean it up and be done in a couple years. It's all in FCC docket WT0255. A couple thousand pages, but we give you all the information you need and a roadmap on how to get to it through the FCC website, fcc.gov. So back to the future. Here we go, a little redundant. Nextel had nothing to lose, no out-of-pocket cost, everything to gain. They were going to be in the broadband business, that capable with the 1900 megahertz. They were rebanding the 800 megahertz. What about the spectrum they were going to have to give up? They're going to have to give up 40% of that valuable spectrum. No problem. Remember, the vocoder from Motorola was going to double their capacity. So let's take a look at this. There they got the 1900 megahertz block. They're happy. 800 megahertz. They're going to have that completed in 2 or 3 years. Which will double their capacity. It's going to look like this. They have to give up the purple expansion band and the gold guard band, which is the same as the blue, but they were doubled their capacity, so they actually have more capacity after they give it up. Just a brilliant, brilliant situation. It was so brilliant that Sprint bought Nextel. It was the deal of the century, the deal of the decade anyway. So they were going to have to complete their rebanding. They were meanwhile competing in the broadband business, giving up 40% of their capacity. But look at this, the vocoder doesn't work. So now a sensational deal that was going to become a great deal was just a good deal, a very, very good deal. But who gets the 800 megahertz that is going to be given up to the FCC? Well, the FCC is not allowed to keep it. All they can do is relicense it. So it comes to the public. You and I, my clients, get to play again. Well, let's talk about 800 megahertz. What's so great about it other than it's available? Well, it's the Rolls-Royce of spectrum. It's most widely used by Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint. That's what everybody wants, 700, 800, 900. Not the 1900. The 800 signal travels 6 times further than the 1900. Saves cost, increases capacity. 800 has penetration through buildings. If you're in an elevator and you're talking on the phone, you're on 800, not 1900, and it moves more digital information faster. So let's get back to the opportunity. The FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, makes this spectrum available, nobody else, and they make it available to qualified applicants. What does that mean? Age 21, U.S. citizen, non-felon, and when they get the license, they will put it to work within a year. The people, when they get their grant of a license, they'll sell it like my clients did before. People that don't need to will lease it, stay in the business, operate it in a joint venture, or create a wireless company, as they've done in the past. The Federal Communication Commission, again, I'm showing that all of this is in reports, memorandums, orders from the FCC. Let's get technical again. Another way to show the Swiss cheese. This top row is Swiss cheese. Public safety has been a big problem because of the Swiss cheese, and the 911 calls don't go through if the police or the ambulances are in certain areas of the fire department. So that's going to get all cleaned up, all the Swiss cheese, all the holes removed, and it's going to be put down here and given to public safety, as is a lot of the blue in here, public safety, business and industrial, and it's going to be put down here. If you're a Sprint customer, you're here or here, those get combined and put down here. And then they have to give up 40%, the gold and the purple, and that remains there. Who gets the gold and the purple? Us, okay? And why do I say us? Well, pretty much nobody else knows about it right now. Rebanding was to follow the National Public Safety Planning Advisory Committee. They call it NIPSPAC. The FCC said that you had to that Sprint was going to have to reband this, Nextel, then Sprint, according to the 55 NIPSPAC regions. They have to do the blue first, the orange second, the beige third, and the gray fourth. And they're moving right along. And they just received a mandate from the SEC in October. It says they have to get 21 of these regions done this year, and the rest of them done by March of next year. So they're pushing, and they're getting the job done. Let's talk about valuation. What is this worth? When the FCC did the swap with Sprint Nextel, they said the Swiss cheese was worth $1.49 and the clean and contiguous was worth $1.70. What that means from a valuation standpoint is if you have an area, and I'm going to discuss this area, of about 600,000 people, when the FCC hands you their grant, according to their valuation, it's worth $180,000. That's just an appraisal, no better than your home appraisal by your county assessor. Let's look at reality as opposed to appraisal. Auction of 2008, winning bidders paid an average of $365 a pop in markets of $500,000 or more, not $1.49 or $1.70. We've never seen anything this low again. Again, AT&T paid in the same year $16.10 a pop, not $1.49, not $1.79, not $1.70, not $1.60, $365, $16.10. And then Verizon paid $22.72 for rural cellular, and Paul Allen of Microsoft sold some stuff for $40 a megahertz pop. So again, better than too good to be true? Yeah. The FCC has broken up the country into 176 economic areas, including the Gulf of Mexico, where I think there's a lot of cellular traffic right now. But these areas were broken up into 15 segments each, 15 licenses in each one. We're going to talk about one right down here where they play the Masters each year, Augusta. So when we send you your information, if you don't already have it, you'll get this economic area map as well. So let's talk about Augusta. It's called Area 27. It's the 100th largest of all the economic areas. It has a population, had a population in year 2000, at the last census of 605,000 people. That's a pop. A person is a pop. and it comprises Augusta, Aiken, and the area surrounding that, and it's way down here. 605,000 people. In 2000, Sprint had about 7.5% of the marketplace, or 45,000 customers in Aiken, Augusta area, spending about $60 a month for a total income. Here we go, money from thin air, $2,700,000. Because they're also a wireline company, not just wireless, their operating margins are probably about 50 or 60%. We used 40, so they're making at least $1 million a month, money from thin air again. They've got 360 channels in that area. Divide that into the million, they're making about $3,000 a channel. Your license in that area, should you select to be in that area, would be for 4 channels times 3,000 or 12,000 a month. Wow. But you have to give up some of it, 60% of it, to Sprint or somebody like them. They don't want to lose their capacity. They'll probably lease it back to you and pay you $4,800 a month. Sprint is going to need this. They're going to lose a lot of their capacity, 40% of it, while supply is being diminished by 40%. Demand is increasing seriously. But if they don't take it, AT&T needs it, and so does Verizon. More importantly, T-Mobile really needs it. So do the other ones. Let's talk about things you have to know about the Federal Communication Commission. They are responsible for granting license, and it's on their timetable, and it could take a year or more for issuance. That's almost true, even though they say it's on their timetable and it's written that way, and that's what the law says. Really, isn't it true that Sprint Nextel has to first complete the rebanding? So it's on their timetable as well, but the FCC is mandating that they get it done this year and next year. And when you get your grant, you get a federal registration number. Post-license, in other words, after you get the license, there are some requirements. You have to put the license to work within 12 months. In summary, let's put it this way. There's a limited number of available licenses. Of course, it's on a first-come, first-served basis. Very unique income stream opportunity, owns somebody else's income stream that they have to give up. Very low risk as a result, very high income. Small investment, high value, certainly work-free. So let's look at questions. What am I buying? You're going to buy and own spectrum, airwaves. What's the risk? We ask our application engineer, who's one of the tops in the country, what's the risk? He said to us a year ago that within 6 to 18 months, you will get a license. It's just a matter of when. And if it's on a border area like Canada or Mexico, it might be 2 to 3 years. So the risk is when you will get it, not if you will get it. What's the value? FCC says it's worth one thing. The reality is, in practice, it's been worth a lot more. Why don't the big companies buy the spectrum? Of those 15 licenses available in each one of those areas, large companies are only allowed to have 2 to 3 of them. Antitrust. They're not interested. How long before I make money? We've discussed that. 1 year to 2 years, unless it's a border, 2 to 5 years. Why isn't everyone doing this? Simply, they haven't learned about it yet. We've only been doing it. We knew about it in 2008, prepared for 2009. What are the best markets? Generally, the bigger are better, and high-tech areas, growing areas, good economic areas. Can the FCC orders be changed? I'm going to stretch here and say they probably won't be because of public safety. They want that cleaned up. In addition to that, the FCC wants to be paid for the 1900 megahertz that they loaned to Nextel Sprint. And because of the high demand, there's no reason for the orders to be changed at all. Typically, they're not. And it would take 2 years to change them, and this is going to be over by then. How is my money used? It's spent. It's spent for engineering, pre-site selection, application services submission, legal, overhead, and profit. Urgency? Yes. First come, first served. These will be gone in about 3 to 5 months. So this is an important situation to look at. There's 3 simultaneous events taking place. Applications are being prepared and submitted to the FCC. Applications frequency coordinator. Rebanding is taking place by Sprint, and the FCC is waiting to approve. Let's look at that graphically. Let's pretend you create an application through our application services provider, have them do the engineering, all the site selection, and submit it today for Aiken, Augusta, Georgia. Submit it to the frequency coordinator, FCC frequency coordinator. They review it to make sure it's proper and approve it, timestamp it at some time, and it's in their database. The Federal Communication Commission, meanwhile Sprint is filing progress reports relative to rebanding, and as they complete, they let the FCC know. And let's pretend that takes about a year. So a year from now, the FCC approves Aiken Augusta. Then, for the first time ever, a public notice is issued and the public learns about this. The application services engineering firm, the FCC frequency coordinator, presses a button, files the applications, and to use a baseball term, before the other team is at the stadium even suiting up, the game is over. So, why buy Spectrum? It's a work-free business. I like that, being older and being an accountant. I like work-free. Better than typical investing because there's value appreciation here based upon cash flow. What's that? You know, we don't even have stocks that pay dividends anymore. It's a slight exaggeration. Much lower risk than the stock market. Better than businesses because it's work-free. Low overhead, low maintenance, no employees, and if you hire a manager, infinite return on your expended time. Here's a guy that's been around for a while, just like me. He said in this article, look, we rarely get a second chance. I know that, but I have one now, and I'm involved in 21 licenses myself. I suggest you jump on this immediately. William Safire of the New York Times said Spectrum is the most valuable natural resource of the information age. No doubt about it. Ask Carlos Slim, wealthiest man in the world. Senator Pressler said the Spectrum is to the information age what oil and steel were to the industrial age.
I've been involved now about 4 years, and every time I hear Kent speak, and it seems like I hear something new, and I just get more excited. But let's touch briefly on what we are offering through Premier Spectrum Group. Our private membership association, Premier Spectrum Group, will apply for 5 of the channels in each of the 25 largest economic area markets. That's 25 out of the top 27. 2 of them are already gone. They came out in the public notice last fall. So we'll be applying for a total of 125 channels. The offering that will be being made is a total raise of $1,600,000. What that amounts to is 64 $25,000 membership units. Each membership is, I said, $25,000, which includes the application, acquisition, legal, marketing, management of the FCC licenses, and the total assessment fees then will, of the $1.6 million, will represent 100% ownership of Premier Spectrum Group, a Texas private membership association. The managing member of this membership association is Premier Spectrum Management, and they will provide asset management services for the property or the FCC licenses, and will act on behalf of the association in managing the property, paying expenses, dispersing cash flows, and overseeing the general function of the asset. Premier Spectrum Management will not receive any asset management fee for managing and acting as custodian of the separately managed account. Since we're applying for only 25 of the top 27 economic areas, we anticipate all 25 markets to be totally applied for within the next 3 to 6 months. So there's a fairly short window of opportunity here, as you can see, for participating in this license opportunity. I'd like to step back a couple of slides and talk about the $25,000 membership unit. Actually, we have made accommodations to some down to $10,000. That's our preference, to be at the $10,000 at the lowest, and then membership units of 25, a maximum of 6 $25,000 units to any one individual or group, making a total of $150,000. So that's the opportunity. If you only have maybe $10, $15, $20,000 and you say, oh, I can't participate because I don't have the 25, please be in touch with me or one of our reps, and I'm going to give you the way that you can reach out to us, and that is to our 800 number. It's on the screen there. Contact information is 888-848-7363. And we'll leave it up here for a little while so that you can write that down. Or you can email us at info at premierspectrum.com. Info or sales, either one, info or sales, at premierspectrum.com. And we encourage you to go to our website, and you will see a number of the documents that Kent referred to. They're posted on the website. If you'd like for us to forward those to you, we'd be more than happy to. We do have a presentation packet that we can forward to and will forward to you along with an application. With that, we're going to go ahead and close the webinar this evening, and we thank you for your time this evening. Make it a great day. God bless, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.